I thought I would do a quick demonstration of the software that I'm using to assist me in filtering papers for the literature review I'm working on. So it's called ASReview, and it is free and open source, and it was developed initially by Utrecht University. The way it works is you have to install it on your computer. It's a little more complicated than just a standard installation because it's a Python app. So you have to install Python if it isn't already installed. Then you install this software and then you start it in the command prompt. It runs, however, in the browser. So once you've done all that stuff, it becomes very easy because you're running it in a browser window as like a normal website. So I'm just going to show you what it actually does for you and how it works. So what I've done is I've uploaded a pre-prepared set of data. So I got my data by downloading search results from different databases. So I downloaded from EBSCOhost, from ProQuest, Scopus, and Web of Science. So I imported those into Zotero. I then cleaned them by checking for duplicates amongst that data that I got from the searches. And also, I think there was one retraction. So I removed all that stuff. Then I made sure when I downloaded the data that I was downloading it with the abstracts included. So every one of these records has an abstract down here attached to it. Then I right click on this and I export the collection as a RIS file. I just included the notes. I don't think there are any actually, but I included the notes. And I save that as a file on the computer. Then once I've got that, I came in here and created a new project. So to create a new project, you just click the Create button. And then it asks you to give it a title. You can put some information in here if you already know your details. Then on the next page, I'll just put test here. On the next page, you then add your data set. So that's uploading the RIS file that I just created. So I will just do a test add for this. So let's just pick one of the smaller ones. So once you've done that, it then says how many records you have, if there are duplicates in there, which there were for me. There were more. I had run a deduplication check in Zotero, but it didn't actually find them all. So it told me that there were 10 duplicates, despite the fact that I'd done that. So I went through and manually checked for duplicates and removed them all. Then you, once you've done that, you need to then give it some knowledge. So what you do is you think about your research question, and you can search in your corpus, or you can just ask it to give you random pieces from it. And then what you're doing here is you're going to label some of these as relevant or not relevant to your research question. So you just have a look at them and you go, yes, that's relevant. Yes, that's relevant. No, that one's not relevant. Yes, that one's relevant. No, that one's not relevant. And it will keep giving you more until you hit its minimums, which is 5 of each kind. So now it's saying 5 records are labeled as relevant. You've found enough relevant records. And then it wants you to... Oh, so it's got enough prior knowledge at the top there. So you can then close that, and then you can move on to the next step, which is choosing a model. There are different options here, but as it says here, that the default setup is fast and good performing. So I just stuck with that. I didn't change anything. And then on the next page, it then warms up the AI with the information that you've already given it. Now, as a tool, this is not labeling anything for you. It is just helping you to get through this stack of papers without having to read them all. So what I'm going to do is come out of this and go into my real project that's in review. So I have got 562 records in here. I've labelled 30 as so far, and I've found 12 that are relevant. And what it has on this analytics page is it has irrelevant records since last relevant. So that is, so I think the one I last labelled was relevant, so that is 0. But if it had been, say, 5 papers since I last marked one as relevant, it would say 5. So the way this works is that you mark things as relevant and irrelevant, and as you go, the machine learning algorithm that you're using reorders the stack of papers and presents you with papers that it thinks you're more likely to think are relevant. And it moves the ones that it thinks you're less likely to mark as relevant further down the stack. So what you end up doing is thinking about this from the perspective of your criteria. So what I've done here is, where am I? Here. So I've decided that a cutoff of 50 papers since my last relevant result makes sense. So once that number hits 50, then I would stop reviewing. And with luck, I won't have got to review all of these papers because it will slowly there'll be fewer and fewer good results. And then you'll get 50 where there's a gap of 50 and there's no new relevant ones, and then you can stop. So every time I find a new relevant paper, this number resets. So in practice, what you're doing is you go to the review tab where you actually do the marking and reviewing of the abstracts. You can also add a note that gets saved when you categorize it. There's a history tab, so you can see all of the ones that you've actually marked. And I've been trying to, for the most part, put a note on them that just says why I have given it that rating. What you can then also do is, when you have finished, you can export your data, first of all, so that you can then go, okay, these are my corpus of papers that I'm going to review. But also, you can actually include all of the data, the model, everything. And what that means is that someone can then import it into their copy of this, and they can also go through your data again. So you can have someone who's checking your categorization. So that's really good if you're working in a group of people, or you just want to make sure that you've not missed anything. You want to be a bit more rigorous. So you're getting someone else to also check your work, as it were. So this is where you set up the kind of project details. So this is the stuff I put at the beginning. Those are my proposed literature review questions. It gives you the data set, etc., and the model setup. So you'll spend most of your time in this review page, and it's really easy to do. All you do is look at the title, read through this, and decide if it meets your kind of basic inclusion and exclusion criteria or not. If it meets the inclusion criteria, you mark it as relevant. If it meets the exclusion, if it doesn't meet that and it's excluded, then you mark it as irrelevant. So this one I already know is relevant. So you can add a note down here. And I think I thought, I had a quick look at this before and thought that it was relevant. So I'm looking at inclusive and accessible online learning material. So this is definitely looking at that. So I could put a note down here that just says looks at OER accessibility and inclusion. And then to save it, I save the note by labeling the record as relevant or irrelevant. So I click relevant, it saves that note, it tells me if it's done it, and it gives me the next paper to review. So you can see it's quite focused and potentially very quick. So I've already gone through 30 of these, and I think I had spent about 25 minutes on it before I made this video. So it is quite fast. So let's just do a few more. So I think that's not relevant because that is training faculty members to develop online teaching. And they haven't mentioned, I mean, they've mentioned accessibility there, but it doesn't seem to be like a real part of this. Its main focus is the training for the faculty. So I'm going to mark that as irrelevant, and I'm going to put on here, it seems it's I'm going to mark that as irrelevant. Next one. So development calls. Okay, so this one is looking at accessibility metadata standards to improve the search and sharing of OERs and using universal design for learning. So I think that is relevant. Yeah, so I'm marking that as relevant. So this is open platforms. So to me, this is about learning management systems, and I've explicitly excluded learning management systems from my review because they provide quite basic tools, and my particular area is in digital learning development. So I look at more complicated stuff that generally isn't designed by teachers themselves, but requires an external professional like me to come and help with. So I'm going to say it's focus on LMS and mark it as irrelevant. And depending on how your computer's set up, you can make this even nicer because you can do things like, I have a button that turns on voice typing on my computer, which is something I use quite a lot because I have wrist pain if I type too much. So, and that just makes it a little bit more fluid, I suppose. So let's have a look at this one. This is growth-oriented mindsets. Flow. I don't think this is relevant. So I'm going to add a note. This study is about growth mindsets and the impact on engagement with OERs. Turn that off, it's got OER as well. And then I'm going to mark that as irrelevant. So this one is about teacher training. So it seems that it's about existing, so it's professional development rather than educational development. But I have actually included in my criteria, I included professionals' experiences and approaches to producing, managing, teaching, or encouraging the adoption of accessibility features in digital learning materials. So I think that probably fits in with that. So, and it explicitly mentions universal design for learning. I think this, in particular, the reason I included this is because I think sometimes there are barriers here. So identifying those barriers I felt could be quite useful as well. So I'm going to say that it's relevant. I'm going to add a note that says considers TPAC and OER development with teacher professional development, including universal design for learning. And then I'm going to mark that as relevant. So as you can see, it's fairly quick to do. It presents you with the information you need, all the information you need to make the initial screening decision, and nothing that you don't. For example, if you were trying to do this with Zotero, what you might do with Zotero is set up to perhaps subfolders here for like include and exclude, and then you'd be sort of dragging them into the right ones. But there's so much on the screen here that's going on that you don't need to make that decision, that this is going to give you a lot of extra kind of cognitive load, really, as a barrier in actually making your decision, because you have, if I click on one, you have, oh, I've got all this here, I've got all this stuff I don't really need to know, then the abstract is down here, I'm ignoring half the page. So I like this. And also because the fact that you can export what you've done, both for use in something like Zotero to do your reference management after you've actually done your screening, or as a sort of a checking method by giving it to someone else to also go through, and then you've got someone sort of corroborating your selections that way. So anyway, I hope this is helpful. I'm going to continue doing this now.